So it's 6:45, just woke up, packed everything, good to go. This is my video vlog of this little trip that I'm doing. So it'll be an interesting one. Still kind of half asleep. Stayed up way too late last night. So yeah, let's just do this. Godspeed, little man. Okay, so landed at Pearson Airport. Now I need to find myself some coffee. Alright, so this year, 2018, has been amazing. Probably the best year in music for the past decade at the very least. Probably even of this millennia. So I didn't want to do like a whole worst list of albums. What I do want to do is do a kind of a disappointments. Like those albums that came in this year that just didn't really measure up to the hype that I was hoping for. Didn't really... I'm also walking the dog here, Brooks. So if you see me, Brooks, where are you at? There she is. There she is. Yeah. So yeah, first right off the bat, the Flower King album from Olin Stolt. As I mentioned in my review, this guy was just a disappointment. It felt more of an obligation than anything else, and I think that was the biggest drawback for me. There was nothing that really caught my ear throughout the entire run length. Another album that I completely forgot came out this year was Spock's Beard's Noise Room. I didn't realize, I just completely forgot about this album. It was completely forgettable. There wasn't anything to latch onto, and especially after such the return to form, a return to brilliance that their self-titled work, X and Brief Nocturnes had. I mean, the Obliviation Particle was a little bit of a disappointment, but Noise Floor really was a disappointment. I don't remember a thing off of that album. And the other one that wasn't necessarily a disappointment, but the one that I wanted more from, and I think it was just the studio and how they presented it, was Between the Buried and Me's, their latest album, where it was like part 1 and 2. Listening to the whole thing as a whole, it's a great album. It probably doesn't measure up to like their classics like Colors and The Parallax and The Great Misdirect, but it was a little bit harder than Coma Eclectic, and I think that alone really helped, and it had some really memorable moments on it as well. But because they released it as like a double discer and separated it, so you had to wait all this time to get the completion of the album, that really did it for me as well, in a negative way. So okay, so I got halfway back to the my buddy's place that I'm staying at while I'm here in Nova Scotia. Oh, by the way, I'm in Nova Scotia if you haven't figured out. We're about 45 minutes outside of Halifax, and look at that view. People wonder why I love Canada so much, but yeah, I'm just kind of standing on a bridge right now. You know, between kind of an inlet for the ocean. It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. Anyway, got halfway back and I realized I forgot to talk about one of the biggest disappointments of the year, Muse's Simulation Theory. I know a lot of people are really digging this album. It's just not for me. I've tried. After my review, people were like, oh, you need to really listen to it. You need to really get into it. So like I've sat myself down and tried to get into it, but it's not for me. It's very uninteresting. It's very bland, and outside of maybe like 2 or 3 songs, the first song, that third song and the last song just doesn't do anything for me. Oh, and Thought Contagion. I really like Thought Contagion, but it's just surrounded by a whole bunch of blah. So that's about it. I'll meet you guys inside. Welcome back inside. All right, so I'm at my buddy's place. He's off to work, and I, because I'm on vacation, I'm just kind of lounging on the couch, finished a book, and on my way back, I realized I forgot one of the biggest disappointments of the year. This probably holds the biggest disappointment of all the albums of 2018, only because of the personnel that is found on it and the amount of hype that I brought to the table within this. A part of this is my fault, but that was The Sea Within, their debut album. They had a lot going for them. They had a lot of really great musicians that I personally love. They had Daniel Gilden Lowe, they had Roland Stolt, they had Marco Miniman, like so many great talented musicians from the, I guess, the like 2000 era progressive rock heyday, and it felt like Flying Colors 2.0 but slightly worse. It didn't even feel all that poppy, which is what Flying Colors were attempting. It didn't even feel all that proggy either. It just kind of felt like this little bit of a no man's land. So that was probably, out of all the albums, the biggest disappointment. But let's move away from some of the disappointments and let's talk about some of the honorable mentions. Those albums that weren't in my top 10 or won't be in my top 10, but those that I wanted to talk about and give a little bit more praise to. I think I'm going to move around and make some tea first, so let's grab some tea. Right, and as I was making tea, I remembered a couple other albums that didn't all really impress me as much as I was hoping they would. Gazpacho's Soyuz. Yeah, it was better than Moloch, but it didn't have that drive or that force or that beauty that Demon or March of Ghosts had within this later part of their career. And Tesseract's album was another one that was a little bit of a letdown, especially with some of their really, really great stuff that they've been putting out. Like, they were one of my favorite metal bands, like straight up metal bands of this past decade. And I don't know, I feel like this was the first real misstep for them. Like, they've been building upon each album, and their latest one didn't really impact me all that much. But tea's ready, and I'm going to review some of the other albums that I had reviewed over the year. To talk about some of those albums that I really, really enjoyed that aren't going to be featured on my top 10 list, but I still feel as though I want to give them a little bit of a nod, a little bit of a praise. So I'm going to have a couple sips of my tea and we'll get into that. Arr. Got my list. So, within this year, 2018 has just been one of the best years in music in the longest time that I can remember. I wouldn't feel all that satisfied with myself if I only did like a top 10 list, and then I have 5 honorable mentions, but I wanted to go into some of the albums that won't be on that list. And the first one that I wanted to talk about a little bit was The Decembrances, I'll Be Your Girl. This album came out of nowhere for me, especially after the last one of what was their last album? Oh, What a Beautiful World, Oh, What a Terrible World. That album just was not good at all. So the fact that they scaled things back a little bit, but I felt like with each album of theirs, they reinvented themselves slightly. They were trying a different motif. They were trying a different style. And Oh, What a Beautiful World, What a Terrible World. It was the first one that didn't do that, and I feel the same kind of continued with I'll Be Your Girl, where they didn't really try all that new stuff or information or anything, but the songs were a lot more enjoyable than the predecessing album. They were a lot more catchy, they had a lot more great moments in it, they had a few longer stretches of songs which I really liked, so that one had to be an honorable mention. Friendship from Gunfly, another album that was fantastic and one that I really, really enjoyed. The first 4 songs from that album were really, really good, but after that it did kind of peter off. Like, the first half was so strong that the second half just kind of left me wanting more, in kind of a bad way. Alright, next up I gotta talk about Equinox Infinity by Jean-Michel Jarre. Love this album, really, really dug it. It proves once again that even within his older age, the sequel album, which is usually a hit and miss, he's been hitting very solidly for each one. Evership came back this year with an even better album than their debut. Like, their debut album was so solid, and I was a little worried about where they were going to go after it because it was so long in the making. So only 2 years afterwards, and Evership 2 just blew me away. Such a great piece there. And talking about pieces, Colin Tench put out an album just before his untimely passing last year, unfortunately, with Minor Masterpieces. Now, I know technically this is a 2017 album, but I didn't hear it until 2018, so that's why I'm sticking it on here. Lovely little piece, and I'm so saddened that Colin isn't with us anymore, so definitely go out and find this one because it's a really good treat. I also wanted to mention The Tangent with Proxy. It feels like they're taking a step in the right direction. Probably the first real solid album from The Tangent since Recounted. Riverside and Lunatic Soul both put out fantastic albums this year. Just going to move my hand here because, that's getting hard. Both Lunatic Soul and Riverside put out fantastic pieces. Riverside with The Wasteland and Lunatic Soul, The Fragmented Sky. Both great albums. You can definitely feel the grieving process with these boys. And another one that I was surprised didn't even make it onto my top 10 albums of this year, or even in my honorable mentions within my top 10, so top 15 I suppose, was Ghost. The prequel album was so fun. I can't really say it was probably better than the last album that they put out. It was definitely a lot more fun, and in that sense I really enjoyed it. Arena also put out a fantastic album this year of Double Vision. Classic neo-prog, and one of the few really good neo-prog albums. Like, neo-prog had a great year last year. This year there wasn't a whole lot of neo-prog on it. I'm hoping that neo-prog is going to come through and just explode in 2019 with some kind of a mix-up or a change. We can only hope, right? And speaking of neo-prog, Comedy of Errors put out an album this year of Houses of the Mind. Comedy of Errors put out one of my favorite albums either last year or the year before with Spirit. Love that album. Spirit is such a beautiful work. And Houses of the Mind was a little bit of a disappointment in that sense, but it was still a standout album of 2018. Like Eat the Elephant from A Perfect Circle. We waited a long time for this, and it was very different than anything we had heard, but the more I'm listening to it, the more I'm getting into it. It's kind of reminding me of like Radiohead's A Moon-Shaped Pool, where when it first dropped, I'm like, I don't know if I like this at all. But the more I'm listening to it, the more I'm getting the intricacies and the subtleties of this album, and it's becoming one of my favorite from the group. Really good. And another one that I was really surprised of and really enjoyed was Joe Satriani of What Happens Next. I mean, the Satch always puts out great albums, but I always find like it's a compilation album of things that he's had in his mind that he's finding just blur. And What Happens Next was one of the first that felt like an actual album as opposed to a compilation of just tracks that he was able to find and put together. Pineapple Thief was a little bit of a disappointment with The Dissolution. It was better than their last 3 albums, like all the way up to The Wars, but it still didn't quite you know? But the one that I'm going to end on this year as being this honorable mentions, not within the top 15, is Gleb Kol... I always mispronounce this guy's name. I should just Google Translate it. Gleb Koldlians. Anyway, he's the main keyboardist from I Am the Morning, and this album did blow me away, and I'm a little bit saddened, well, not saddened, because there's just so much good music this year. But I was a little bit drawn out and like saddened that I couldn't put it on my honorable mentions within my top 10 list, so rounding out like the top 15. Such great movements on this album. He shows that an instrumental album it can still make waves in this day and age, and just a wonderful piece. So that's about it for this little road trip catalog of albums that I was talking about. Look forward to my top 10 with 5 honorable mentions coming out later on. I'm gonna get back to this couch and enjoy this time off. So enjoy a little bit of a road trip video.
At 1019 weather. A rainfall warning has been issued. Rain at times heavy today. It will be windy. And
rain? I don't know what they're talking about.
Temperature falling to 6 this afternoon.